Amateur, composed and conducted by Malcolm Arnold.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Dubious Engineering. This video is about magnetic reel-to-reel tapes. Beautiful audio engineering from the past. I purchased an old vintage 1963 Sony tape recorder or reel-to-reel tape recorder. Model Tapecorder 102. I bought it from eBay, bit of a whim. And compared to my modern Sony Pocket MP3 recorder that I use for making my videos, this thing is an absolute monster. So some time ago my grandfather handed to me some reel-to-reel audio reels, including, and I didn't realise it at the time, but on these tapes included some audio recordings of my sister at the age of 3 years old, which is some 50 years ago now. My father, whom passed away, his voice and our family together, and also the playing of guitars and some singing that my sister and I did maybe 30 years ago, a bit of a cover or a rendition of FOXY Lady by Jimmy Hendrix. I won't put you through that one, it was quite awful. I asked my mother to get involved with me on this as well because she was on one of the audio tapes, and it was quite an amazing experience and brought back some incredible memories. I'll include some of that footage at the end of this video. But before all of that, we've got some really interesting history on this equipment. There is some really interesting history on this type of audio equipment. The reel-to-reel format was used in the earliest tape recorders, including the pioneering German-British Blattnerphone machines of the late 1920s, which used steel tape, and the German magnetophone machines of the 1930s. But just before we go on, please don't forget to share this with friends, thumbs up, like and subscribe. Join Dubious Engineering on Facebook, Instagram or Twitter to see what's coming in future videos and perhaps influence their outcome. If you're feeling particularly generous, pop over to Patreon. A couple of quid can go a long way towards helping with equipment and also influencing what projects we're up to. And obviously, a massive thank you to our current patrons. Again, so some really interesting history here. The earliest machines produced distortion during the recording process, which German engineers significantly reduced during the Nazi German era by applying a bias signal to the tape. This was actually stumbled across by accident. In 1939, one machine was found to make consistently better recordings than other identical models due to a minor flaw introducing an AC signal into the tape. This was quickly adapted to new models using high-frequency AC bias that has remained a part of the audio tape recording to this day. The quality was so greatly improved that recordings surpassed the quality of most radio transmitters, and as such, recordings were used by Adolf Hitler to make broadcasts that appeared to be live while he was safely tucked away in another city. Reel-to-reel or open-reel audio tape recording is a form of magnetic tape audio recording in which the recording medium is held on a reel. The supply reel or the feed reel containing the tape is mounted on a spindle. The end of the tape is then manually pulled out of the reel, threaded through some mechanical guides and a tape head assembly, and is then attached by friction to the hub of a second, initially empty take-up tape reel. Reel-to-reel systems sometimes use tape that is 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 1 inch or 2 inches wide, which normally moves at 3 3/4 or 7.5 inches per second. This compares to the narrower and slower compact style cassette tapes, which perhaps our era is more used to, which is 0.15 inches or 3.8 millimeters wide and moves at 1.78 inches a second, almost 4.8 centimeters a second, almost 5 centimeters a second. By writing out the same audio signal across more tape, the bandwidth of that tape is improved. So reel-to-reel systems offer much higher fidelity at the cost of much larger tapes. So in the spite of larger tapes and less convenient use, and generally higher cost media, reel-to-reel systems remained popular in the audiophile settings into the 1980s. So reel-to-reel tape was also used in early tape drives for data storage machines on mainframe computers. If I look back at some old movies that I've watched in the past, I do remember seeing large reel-to-reel tape recorders spinning backwards and forwards. In fact, if I think back, Superman, one of the early Superman movies, definitely had a room full of those types of machines. War Games, I don't know if any of you remember War Games. I wonder if that had some of that in there as well. Anyway, so high quality audio recorders have used tape drives for a long old time, since the early 1940s up until the present. And some of the popular brands might have been Studer, Stellavox, Denon, Sony, Revox, Hitachi. Pretty much every man and their dog got into this business. And in fact, Studer, Stellavox and Denon still produced reel-to-reel tape recorders even into the 1990s. But this has pretty much all been blown away now by digital media. So the Sony TC-102, the Sony tape recorder, transistorized tapecorder, a TC-102. Its frequency response, the model that I have here, its frequency response is 50 Hz to 12 kHz. So a little bit low on the high-end frequencies there, and also a little bit cut short on the low-end frequencies. The signal-to-noise ratio is about 50 dB, so the speed, it can do 3.75 inches per second and 7.5 inches per second. It has one motor in there, and it can take reels of up to 7 inches. The timing accuracy is 0.2%, so I guess that must be wow and flutter. And the weight is about 18 pounds. And back when this was made, the price was about $130 US. So that's, if you were to translate that forwards, probably $700 or $800 now. So about £500 or £600. Translated to English there. But it's really quite a cool piece of kit. So the entire unit is completely portable, has a speaker on it, and it says it's transistorized. So I believe this particular model that I've got here may be completely transistorized, whereas there were a couple of models in advance of this that actually had valves in them as well as transistors. Now, this is entirely portable. It's entirely enclosed, almost like a little briefcase or a little box with a handle on it. And you can take the lid off of it. And once you've removed the lid, you have the two spools, one for the feed tape and one for the take-up spool. You have a little knob in the middle of it that allows you to change between 3 3/4 and 7.5 inches per second, so that changes the tape speed. You've got two inputs on the side of it that give you the ability to be able to either plug in a microphone or plug in another audio source. And then you have a recording level meter as well. Inside the tape head assembly are a couple of mechanical guides which guide the tape through the pinch roller assembly. And then you have a blanking head which erases the tape. And then you have a recording and playing head which effectively records and or plays back the tape. On the right hand side of the unit we've got a little lamp that tells you that the power is turned on, and then we have a multi-purpose function switch which changes between forward, stop and rewind, and then there's also a little fast forward switch there as well. And then on the left hand side, just below the recording level meter, is a volume control and power switch. So it's all really quite simple. Without further ado, let's go ahead and listen to some of the tapes that I had handed down to me, that we had in our family.
This is my son, everybody.
She's full of beans. I don't know if you remember, a few minutes ago I showed you a picture of, or a short video clip. In fact, I'll show it to you again. So this...
That's an old one.
So this is...
Sounds nice.
So this is an old Sony Reel-to-Reel player that I found on eBay. And I don't know if you remember, but many, many years ago, Grandad, before he passed away, left me a bunch of these reel-to-reel cassette tapes. Or they're not cassette tapes, they're just reel-to-reel magnetic tapes.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So I was going through the collection of magnetic tapes, and I came across this one here. They do look huge, don't they? Yeah. And this one actually had a little note on it that said Herb Halpert, Tijuana Brass, which is great fun. The Goon Shows.
You obviously love the Goons.
Yeah, Sunken Westminster Pier.
Wow.
But actually, when I put it on, it didn't have the Goon Shows on it, and it didn't have any of that on it. What it did have on it was something quite incredible. It brought up some ghosts from the past, shall we say?
Really?
Yeah. In fact, my intention, what I've done is I've recorded it onto the laptop, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to play it for you now, and you can see. So this is the first time you've ever heard this, and you can see there's 20 minutes of it, so I won't put all of our viewers through a full 20 minutes of listening to our family and all that. But maybe we can pick out a couple of highlights.
Well, we can, yes.
So we'll
I mean, it doesn't worry me. I mean, I'm in the house,
Yeah.
full stop. Absolutely beautiful.
All right, so see if you recognise any of the voices on here.
Yeah, Sunday, that's from Margaret Merchant.
That's me.
That's right. Remember when I was telling that time?
Yeah, the car.
Well, a few weeks ago at the floral group, this person had been a couple of years ago and had taken a cine camera and they got a colour film in the cine camera. And the colours were gorgeous. Well, in fact, if you hadn't just heard her say where it was, you'd have thought you were in Holland.
Well, did they show it at the Sunday film at the night school?
Yeah.
Very good,
Changing the subject for a minute.
Well, you recognise the man's voice.
Today.
The man's voice is Dad.
She doesn't go to class. She doesn't dump the whole lot in. And then today it's about 4 daffodils just stuck in a very straight line.
So I'll just pause it there for a second.
Fantastic.
Just pause it there for a second.
Wow.
So Dad unfortunately passed away, didn't he?
Had we got those on a tape? Had we put those on a tape?
Yeah. So that they were on this tape here.
Yeah.
This great big magnetic reel-to-reel tape.
If only your dad could have been what you were, obviously, because your dad was always this. I mean, this was new in our day.
Yeah.
That was new
Yeah,
to
of
have
course.
stuff
New
like
technology, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
But nobody else in our street had anything like that.
Yeah,
That's
sure.
why they used to like to come in and listen.
Yeah, exactly. So basically then what we listened to a whole 20-minute recording on this reel-to-reel tape here, which was a recording, I would say, that was made at least 30 years ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
My mum and dad, this is me mum. My mum and dad, Dad unfortunately is no longer with us.
He's in heaven.
Yeah, he's in heaven. He says hi. Yeah.
From the top.
And you guys, basically Dad had obviously bought a machine to do some recording. He'd bought a tape recorder, a reel-to-reel tape recorder of some description.
Which was like this then in its day.
Exactly, yeah. It's like what we're doing now,
yes.
But the early equivalent
times,
of this is the modern
the
equivalent of it. Exactly,
it was the start of it.
And so you had your neighbour Margaret come in, and you had a chat that Dad had recorded in your council houses.
Yes,
your neighbours in your council houses.
Yes, yeah.
And the talk was quite interesting. One of the things that came up was Dawn and Whiskers, the cat, and the fact that Dawn had cut the whiskers off the cat.
That's right.
Another thing that came up was knocking on the wall of the council houses to complain. It's better to go around and knock on the front door and just explain the reasons while you're complaining, rather than just banging on the door, because just banging on the wall starts problems.
Well, they don't always know they're doing it sometimes.
Yeah.
So,
and then kids jumping on furniture with the shoes on. was another one that came up. So yeah, you should make sure you take your shoes off. And Steve,
that me?
yeah, no, it was Dad that was
Your
complaining
dad-
about
your dad complained more than I ever did. Yes.
And then apparently Stevens, anyone called Stephen,
Yeah.
anyone called Stephen is very naughty because there's 2 or 3 down the road and they've been stealing daffodils and stealing hyacinths. Milkmen help you set the time, apparently. And apparently there was some soap powder that had jellified in the bath, which again is a very interesting point. So don't let your soap powder jellify in the bath. And finally, I learned a new word, which is called mitherer.
Mitherer, yeah.
Mitherer.
To bother me. If you mither me, that's probably a word from where we came from the potteries. From the potteries.
Yeah.
To mither somebody is to put them, they're not quite knowing what the hell to do because you're mithering them, you're bothering, like a little child would be hanging onto your trouser leg.
Yeah, stop mithering me.
And saying, but Mummy, I want so-and-so, I want so-and-so. And just stop, go over there and sit down, go and get a toy, I mean, you didn't have televisions then either, so didn't have anything for them to sit and watch.
Yeah. So fair to say, this has been an experience. It's brought back some brilliant memories. Very surprised that I came across this. Yeah. Very happy that that Dad had recorded this all of those years ago. This is when Dawn was probably about 3 years old. So I will say that it's probably it's well, crikey, Mum, it must be close to 50 years old, this recording. 40, maybe 48 years old, that recording.
Well, my darling, I shall be 80 in February.
Yeah, she's doing really, really well for 80. I will say that.
I can't believe it. I can't, going through all that.
Yeah, 18th of February, is it?
18th of February, and I'll be 80.
Yeah.
So I can't believe that.
It's a few months' time.
I don't feel anywhere near 80.
Oh, you don't look anywhere near 80.
It's brilliant.
I love you, Mum. Give us a hug. Give us a hug. Mwah. We'll end it there. Hey. Cheers, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Brilliant.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Absolutely brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah.